Well, it's been a while since we had another episode of stuff that should have been done a long time ago. Today is going to be a 1995 Dodge Neon Sedan. That's my new toy that I'm going to be working on later. That one's going to be featured in quite a few videos. Right now, today, we're working on the steering. Don't know how well you can hear it, but there's a bit of a clunk in the steering, even though this tire looks like it's alright as far as tied in with the steering wheel. It moves when I move the wheel. The other side has a bad inner tie rod, so that's what we're going to be doing today. We've got the car in the air, got the lug nuts broken loose, but this is how you can tell that the inner tie rod is bad. This could also be wheel bearings and such, but I'm sure you can hear that moving back and forth. Now, I've already assessed the situation, and the ball joints are in good shape. The outer tie rod is in good shape, and the wheel bearing isn't bad. Part of this is, of course, having the lug nuts loose, but the movement is still there with the whole spindle assembly, even with the lug nuts tight. So, let's get the wheel off, get the outer tie rod loose, and then little tip for you guys, especially on these Chryslers. The lock nut here that holds the outer control arm, the outer tie rod on, can seize to this shaft very easily over time with rust and heat and all that stuff. It's split on the bottom. I can't see the camera, so I can't tell if it's pointed or not. But that lets water in, and of course everything seizes up over time. So if you're replacing your outer tie rod end, or both, I would recommend doing the outer one the same time you do the inner one. You can actually take a power inverter, hook it up to your battery, plug in yourself a little Dremel, and just cut that nut in half, and knock it off with a flat tip or a chisel and a hammer. And that makes life a whole lot easier. Now, you don't need a 2,000 watt power inverter like what I've got here. I'm sure just a 1,000 watt or probably even an 800 watt will do just fine, but this makes repairs when you don't have an extension cord and an outside outlet handy much easier, because you can just buzz that right off, be done with it. Saves you a lot of time and headache, believe me, I learned that the hard way. Well, there we go. You can kind of see where I actually cut it. And then I've already spun it a couple of times with a wrench. But yeah, just a little ingenuity and you can get that thing off. Now, I always recommend that you break that nut loose, but not the spindle loose first. If you leave that tight, then you only have to worry about the ball joint pulling apart when you're turning on this, because it takes a lot of torque, and you're not going to hold that ball joint by hand. So, always do that nut before you take the ball joint out of the socket, or you're going to have one hell of a time. Again, something I learned the hard way. Okay, we got the end off, as you can see. Now, I should not be able to turn this by hand, but as you see I can. That's how they get when they're older. There's a little bit of a slit right there where I ground through the nut, but since I'm replacing this anyway, I'm not worried about it. But yeah, as you can tell, that was my big problem. Alright, this is the new tie rod that's going to be replacing the old one, which is right here. And as you can see, it's fairly worn out. I put it back together to try to get a length. I was stupid and didn't measure it before I pulled it off. But that's why you don't want to destroy these, so that you can get somewhat of a length idea. The boot was already torn, so I just pulled the rest of it off. I'm going to slide it back on there and might tape it, might replace it, I'm not sure. I'm not too concerned about it since I've already had it off. It's a lot easier to put back together. But this here is what's known as a inner tie rod removal tool. And because of the stupid design that everybody's decided to go to, rack and pinion, this is what you need to remove it. Comes with various sizes of these little C-clips. They fit over the end, sort of like a wrench. But to install them, you have to slide the inner tie rod end in, slip this over the shaft once it's inside the car, line it up. Doesn't want to go in. It's really hard to do one-handed. Seat it, and then slip the collar over, and then the hex end of the inner tie rod gets held, and you screw it on and off. And believe it or not, that area is impossible to get any kind of wrench or pliers or anything else into, so you have to use one of these stupid tools. And there we are, all back together. Now, I still have to replace this boot eventually, or I can just keep replacing the tie rod ends as they wear out. Lathered it up severely with anti-seize with copper in it. You don't need to do that if you're not keeping the car forever. And then this ball joint is one off of another car. Now, don't ever reuse them. I'm only reusing this one because the car that it came off of, I probably had 2,000 miles on this ball joint before that car's engine blew up, so I just said, screw it. I'm scrapping the car anyway, so I took it. And then don't ever, ever use a hairpin where you should be having a split pin. The only reason I'm doing it right now is because I can't find my pack of split pins. Someone move them. You know who you are. I won't mention your name, but you know who you are, and I really need them back. But yeah, do as I say, not as I do, and that seriously applies in this case because that pin keeps your steering from going away while you're going down the road at 70 or 65 or whatever speed limit you're going at. Easy way to adjust these is to get your steering at least somewhat close until you can take it to an alignment shop. You back this nut off, and then you put a 13 millimeter or a ½ inch on here, and you turn this, and if you screw it into here, that turns the tire's front end out. If you unscrew it, it pulls the front end in by pushing the back out. That is how you adjust to get your steering at least somewhat straight until you can get to an alignment shop. Now, this car had a shit alignment before I started working on it. It's going to have a bad one after I work on it. And the owner is not one of those people that really concerns themselves with that too much, so I'm not going to either, considering that I'm always working on this thing. Anyway, and that's not against Dodge, it's just that, you know, fix one thing, fix another thing. This car was really neglected before I got it for the owner, so yeah, that's, so far, that's how you replace an inner tie rod end. So, yeah, there you go.